Hi everyone, I'm Sara and welcome back to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to make the Warm Spice neck warmer or cowl. It's the perfect cowl for the guys and the girls and the kids, and you can make it in whatever colors you prefer. Now I made this in Warm Spice fall colors. Autumn stripe and burnt pumpkin I felt were perfect for this neck warmer. But you, of course, again, can make it in whatever colors that you would like. I love the striping effect that happens by alternating the colors every 2 rows. Now the cowl measures about 9 inches tall, and it's approximately 28 inches around. But it's super easy to adjust because it's basically V-stitch rows, and you can add as many rows as you want to make it longer or less rows to make it shorter. And as always, you can find all the information you need for adjusting this pattern along with lots of pictures in the link provided down in the notes underneath this video. To make your Warm Spice neck warmer or cowl, you're going to need 2 different colors of yarn. I'm using I Love This yarn from Hobby Lobby. This is an acrylic, a medium weight number 4. The solid I used is called Burnt Pumpkin. And the variegated I used is called Autumn Stripe. And I like the effect of a solid and a variegated or stripe that happens in this pattern. It's very pretty, and I'm not adding any buttons or baubles or anything to it. I'm letting the yarn be the star of this project. And also, I did this in fall colors, but remember, you can do this pattern in any colors that you want. You can even make it a solid, or just do it all in a variegated or striping, or even an ombre. I love the colors of this one in the autumn colors though. And again, this is Burnt Pumpkin and this is called Autumn Stripe, and they're both from I Love This Yarn Hobby Lobby medium weight number 4 acrylic yarns. You need a total of 4 ounces or 2 different colors, 2 ounces each. We're going to be stitching today with our eye hook, which is a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. You need a needle just to weave in ends and your scissors. We're going to begin with our color 1, which is our solid color. We'll start with our slip knot, and we're going to chain 25 chains. And remember, this is the end of our cowl that we're going to hook together. And so you need to make sure that you stitch this just a little bit loose because we're putting the ends together and we don't want it to pucker up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have stitched my 25 chains just a little bit loose, and we're going to stitch a double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yarn over, go in that stitch and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. And now I'm just going to stitch 1 double crochet in each of my chains across. One double crochet in each of our chains across. I began in the 4th chain from the hook and stitched 1 double crochet in each stitch across. We're counting this chain 3 as our first stitch, so you'll have 23 double crochets. We're going to chain 3 and turn. Our chain 3 will count as our first double crochet. And now we're going to double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And so that'll give us 3 right there on the beginning. we're going to skip the next double crochet and stitch our V-stitch in the next. Yarn over and go in, and it's a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the same stitch. We'll skip the next stitch and stitch a V-stitch in the next. We'll skip the next stitch and stitch a V-stitch in the next. And we'll repeat this until we have 8 V-stitches. Skip the next, V-stitch in the next. And again, our V-stitch is a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the same stitch. So I've stitched 8 V-stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches on the end. We're going to skip the next stitch and stitch 1 double crochet in those last 3 stitches. And chain 3. All right, now you'll notice that it might curl just a little bit, but it'll straighten out as we go, so don't let that bother you too much, just as long as your chain is nice and loose. So for row 2, we have 3 double crochets, 8 V-stitches, and 3 double crochets, chain 3. All right, let's do row 3. We've chained 3. We're going to turn our work. Again, our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet, and we're going to double crochet in the first 2 stitches. Now we're going to move to the first chain 1 space and stitch a V-stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. And we'll do this all the way across in all of the chain 1 spaces of our V-stitches. We'll stitch a V-stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Some more yarn out here. And so we'll place a V-stitch in each of the chain 1 spaces of the V-stitches across. I have stitched a V-stitch in each of those 8 chain 1 spaces of my V-stitches. Now we're just going to place 1 double crochet in those last 3 double crochets. We're not going to chain 3 here because we're going to be changing colors. And so for row 3, we have 3 double crochets, 8 V-stitches, and 3 double crochets. And that's basically going to be the pattern for the amount of stitches and V-stitches for this neck warmer. Now we're going to change colors. We're not going to cut our color 1. We're going to bring in our color 2 and then do our chain 3. And it's very important to do that chain 3 after the color change because it counts as our first double crochet on the next row. If we would have kept our solid color, we'd have 1 double crochet that's the wrong color. All right, we're going to keep both our yarns attached because we're going to carry it up the side. All right, now again, our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. We'll double crochet in the next 2 stitches, And then we'll just repeat on row 4 what we did on row 3. We'll stitch a V-stitch in each of the chain 1 spaces of the V-stitches from the previous row. And again, our V-stitch is a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in that chain 1 space. And we'll do this in each of those 8 V-stitches. I stitched a V-stitch in each of the chain 1 spaces of those 8 V-stitches, and now I'm going to stitch 1 double crochet in those last 3 double crochets. And I think you're seeing the pattern of how this is going to work. We'll go ahead and chain 3 because we're not changing colors on the next row. And so for row 4, we again have 3 double crochets, 8 V-stitches, and 3 double crochets. Alright, so for row 5, we've stitched our chain 3. We're going to turn our work. I'm going to move this yarn over here so I don't get twisted, because when you're carrying your yarn up on the side, it's easy to get your yarns twisted. Alright, so all we're going to do on row 5 is just repeat what we did on row 4. Our chain 3 counted as our first stitch, and then we'll stitch 2 double crochets, 1 in each of those next 2, and then again we'll stitch a V-stitch in the chain 1 spaces of each of those 8 V-stitches. This is a super easy pattern, a super easy 1 row repeat as far as the pattern goes. And again, it is the yarn that makes this project so beautiful. Alright, so I'm just going to repeat on row 5 what I did on row 4, 3 double crochets at the beginning, 8 V-stitches, and end with 3 double crochets. I completed row 5. We have our 3 double crochets at the beginning, 8 V-stitches, and 3 double crochets. Now I did not chain 3 because we're changing colors. And so I'm going to bring up my color 1 and chain 3. And now what we're going to do for the next 2 rows, let's get this one out of the way. For the next 2 rows, we're going to repeat what we did on row 3. We're going to stitch 1 double crochet in those next 2 stitches because our chain 3 counts as our first, and then I'm going to stitch a V-stitch in each of the chain 1 spaces of our V-stitches, which we have 8, 3 double crochets, 1 in each of the last 3, chain 3, turn, and repeat, so that we'll have 2 rows of our solid color. I completed those next 2 rows in my color 1, and I did not chain 3 because we're going to bring back in our color 2 and then chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Make sure that stays snug down there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to continue to repeat row 4, row 5, row 6, and row 7 for 41 more rows. And you'll be alternating your colors every 2 rows. It's a simple 1 row repeat of 3 double crochets, 8 V-stitches, and 3 double crochets, alternating your colors every 2 rows and trailing your yarn up the side of your row. But once we finish our neck warmer, we're going to put it together, and then we're going to put a trim on this end, and it will cover those yarns that we're trailing up on the side. All right, so continue to repeat row 4, row 5, row 6, and row 7 for 41 more rows, alternating your colors every 2 rows. I have completed up through row 49. On row 49, you're going to just have one row of your solid color. Or if you added more rows because you wanted it longer, or you did less because you wanted it shorter, make sure you end with one row of your solid. All right? And now we're going to add a row of solid double crochets across. I have left my color 2 attached. We're going to use that for the trim, so don't cut that yarn, okay? Now let's go back to our solid color here. We've chained 3. Get things untwisted here. And we're going to stitch a solid row of double crochet. So again, our chain 3 counts as our first, and we're going to double crochet in those 2 double crochets. And now what we're going to do is just stitch 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets of our V stitches. And so what we're doing is we're ignoring the chain 1 spaces between the double crochets and just stitching 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets of our V stitches. And then when we get to the end of the row, we'll stitch those 3 double crochets in those last 3 stitches. And the reason we're doing this is it's going to make it easier to put the 2 ends of our neck warmer together. All right, now we're just going to chain 1 because we're going to put the 2 ends together. We're going to put the 2 ends of our neck warmer together, and I've moved it so that my loop is on the top, so we can just go through the first stitch and the first stitch over here and slip stitch them together. And just work across, stitching the front and back together with slip stitches. And this will give us a really nice small seam that won't be a problem. All right, and so we'll just slip stitch that together all the way across, and then we'll tie off and we'll finish up using this yarn for the trim. I have stitched them together, nice neat slip stitched seam. Cut our yarn and tie off. Then we'll just grab our needle and weave this end in. And both of our ends there will need to be weaved in. And then the only thing left to do is to trim that side where we have trailed up our yarns. This is the inside, and this is what it looks like on the outside. And we can go ahead and turn it over. And there's our seam. So we've turned our neck warmer or cowl right side out, and here's our seam. Looks nice and neat. And we're going to grab this yarn that is our color 2, and we're going to stitch an even row of single crochets around. So we're going to go in, pull up a loop, make a little chain 1 and then start single crocheting. And when you're single crocheting around an edge like this, it can be a little bit difficult or clumsy maybe. What you want to do is make sure you go around those loops where we carried our yarn, and also we're stitching in double crochets, and so you want to stitch in the ends of these stitches. There may be places where you'll have to stitch in a hole, but you want to try not to. Try to go through stitches and make sure you grab or stitch over those areas where we carried our yarn. This will tidy up the edge of our cowl and make it look nice and neat. So I'm going to continue working around, stitching single crochets evenly around the edge and making sure I stitch over those yarn where we trailed it up the side. I have evenly single crocheted around this edge, making sure that I stitched over all that yarn that we trailed across, and it looks nice and neat. Now, there is not a set number of stitches that you need. It just needs to look nice and neat, not bunched up and not all pulled apart. Okay? I call it eyeballing it. You just want to make sure that it looks neat. So here's where I stitched my last single crochet. I'm going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch and chain 1. And now for our last row, we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those single crochets around. And this will make a nice edge on our neck warmer. One single crochet in each of those stitches, working all the way around. Then we'll join and tie off, and our neck warmer will be done. I have completed that second row of single crochets. I'm going to join to that first single crochet. I'm going to go to the back and pull that loop through so that the front looks nice and tidy. And I just need to weave in this one end, and my neck warmer is all complete. So my Warm Spice neck warmer or cowl is complete. It's all tidied up and ready to be worn. Now, I did not feel like it was necessary to put a trim at the bottom. This is the part that will sit up under your face, and this is the part that's at the bottom. If you want to add a trim on the bottom edge, you can. I just didn't feel like it was needed. I love the striping of this yarn, and I love these colors, and I think this is the perfect Warm Spice neck warmer.